Hi everyone, welcome to my little video introducing the idea of two-dimensionalism in social ontology. Two-dimensionalism is an approach in the philosophy of language that extends the toolset of possible world semantics to model phenomena like context dependence and cognitive significance. It is associated with philosophers like the ones listed here, among others. In two-dimensionalism, the truth values of sentences and the reference of substantial expressions depend on two different kinds of factors. One factor is just the familiar dependence of truth and reference on the state of the world. So whether the sentence "snow is white" is true depends on the color of snow, and what the Prime Minister of New Zealand refers to depends on who the New Zealanders voted for. The other factor may be, depending on the brand of two-dimensionalism, what goes on in the context of utterance, or what epistemic scenarios are open. Now, for brevity, let's focus on context dependence, as theorized by, for example, Kaplan and Stolniker. When I say, "I'll be at work tomorrow," how do we tell whether that's true? Obviously, we need to know whether I'm at work tomorrow. But to even get to that point, we need to gather some other information first, like who the utterer is and when they uttered it. Had these facts been different, then even if I am at work tomorrow, the sentence might have been false, because it would have concerned some other person or some other time. These sorts of facts make up or are entailed by the context of utterance. Now, so far, this is just the basic observation that there is context dependence. The clever idea of two-dimensionalism is that you can treat context of utterance, or whatever else your second point of evaluation is in your version of two-dimensionalism, as forming a space which you can define modal vocabulary over, like necessity and possibility operators or counterfactual conditionals, just as you can over the space of worlds. And then you can do some clever stuff. You can explain why the sentence "I am here now" sort of seems like a necessary truth in spite of describing a metaphysical contingency, or why Hesperus is unavoidably true in a way that Hesperus is phosphorus isn't, even though both are metaphysically necessary. Two-dimensional semantics has been quite a successful research program, and it has inspired some adaptations in other areas, such as, for instance, articulating tenable versions of relativism or subjectivism in metaethics. Here, I want to talk about adapting this sort of idea to social ontology. Now, two-dimensionalism is a natural fit for social ontology because social reality exhibits a kind of distinctive double contingency. What the social facts are depends, of course, on what the world is like. Did I dress fashionably today? Well, it depends on what I wore, but it depends on something else as well, on what counts as fashionable currently. That is, of course, something that's subject to change, so it's a variable that we need to pin down before we can inspect what I wore and see whether it makes me fashionably dressed. This sort of dual dependence makes social facts different from a lot of other facts. Whether I'm a mammal, for instance, depends on whether I fulfill conditions that are not subject to change and which consequently don't need to be tracked as a kind of variable. That the conditions that govern how social facts obtain are a second variable in the determination of social facts has long been countenanced by social ontologists, even if not always clearly articulated. In Searle's influential model, considerative rules characterize how social states of affairs depend on other states of affairs. Whether something is of social kind Y, in context C, depends on whether it is of kind X. But these considerative rules are themselves contingent. And to determine the social facts on the basis of other facts, one must determine those rules first. Searle has a story about how that second variable gets fixed. It depends on what things a population collectively accepts or collectively recognizes. But only recently has there been some recognition that this two-factor dependence of social facts could be understood in a 2D way. The first explicit recognition of this comes in the work of Iris Einhäuser. She separates a space of substrates, ways the world could be, and a space of carvings, ways to carve up what the substrate presents us with. Her stated concern was the metaphysics of conventional facts, in particular with modeling counterfactual reasoning about such facts. But the application to social facts is easily and obviously made. The most explicit recognition of the applicability of two-dimensionalism to social ontology, though even here it remains relatively backgrounded, is in Brian Epstein's work. For him, one variable in the determination of social facts is what possible world we're in. The other is the operative framework, which determines how that world grounds social facts. Now, why would this be progress? Let me just mention a few things. First and most immediately, it greatly helps with understanding the modal aspects of social metaphysics, like counterfactual reasoning about social facts. And that's something that hasn't been much theorized at all. Secondly, it sheds light on issues that social ontologists sometimes make slightly confused noises about. For example, whether social reality is mind-dependent. It turns out to depend on the dimension you consider. Along the worldly dimension, by which social facts are determined by other facts about the world, they only incidentally are. Along the other dimension, by which social facts depend on what conditions are put in place, they may be systematically mind-dependent, though it depends very much on how you think about the process by which these conditions are fixed. You can be more internalist / intentionalist about that, or you can be more externalist / non-intentionalist about that. And thirdly, just in general, two-dimensionalism provides a route, if not the only one, to understanding and developing the concepts of social ontology in terms of a relatively better understood and better developed set of tools from other subdisciplines of philosophy, which hopefully increases the rigor that we can bring to our work. Thanks very much.